I wasn't even watching the TV. I just needed the noise. That's the part no one tells you. Grief isn't loud. It's dead quiet. And then I heard it. From the kitchen. My name. His voice. He'd been gone 2 years. I didn't imagine it. I know what I heard. And what showed up next. I still don't know how to explain it. But I think that was the night I stopped surviving and started breathing again. Hey family, welcome to Mr. Hearthline Stories, where every story is a quiet step toward healing, and no heart sits alone. Tell us where in the world you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches something deep in you, type, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline." That's how we know you're part of this big family we're building together. And if the story stays with you, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it more than they'll admit. May peace find you today right where you are. Let's begin. The television hummed on mute. Callie sat curled on the couch, knees pulled tight to her chest, the flickering screen washing her face in cold blue. Outside, the wind pressed against the little farmhouse walls like it wanted in. Inside, only the soft buzz of the old TV broke the silence. It had been 2 years. Still, she left the volume low, not off. Sound meant she wasn't entirely alone. She didn't cry anymore. Not usually. But tonight, the quiet felt too sharp. She reached for the worn quilt draped over the armrest, the one stitched by Levi's mother. The corners were frayed now, still smelled faintly of wood smoke and spearmint. She folded it over her lap and leaned her head back, staring blankly at the screen. She wasn't watching. She never really was. A lioness on the screen opened her mouth, silent roar lost to the mute. And then, a sound. Not from the TV. Not from the wind. From the kitchen. A muffled, fragile cry. "Callie!" She sat up straight, heart slamming against her ribs. Her eyes darted toward the kitchen doorway. Silence. She swallowed hard, telling herself it was a trick of memory. Maybe her mind, tired and stretched, was playing games again. She stood. Each step toward the kitchen felt like walking through syrup. Slow, heavy, uncertain. Her fingers clenched the pendant around her neck. Levi's wedding band. She had strung it onto a chain the day after the funeral and hadn't taken it off since. The hallway stretched out longer than it should have. Lights off, her breathing loud in her ears. She turned the corner. The kitchen was empty, but the air, it felt charged. Like the pause before a summer storm. Her gaze lifted to the window above the sink. And there, perched on the ledge, a bird. Small, bright, blue head, red breast, green wings, painted bunting. Levi's favorite bird. He used to call them little miracles in feathers. It blinked once, tapped the glass, and stayed. Callie's knees buckled, and she dropped to the floor, hands over her mouth. Tears came. Not a sob, not a wail, just quiet rivers pouring down her cheeks. "Is that you?" she whispered. "Levi?" The bird cocked its head, and then it flew away. But something stayed behind. Not the bird, not the voice. Something inside her. Like warmth returning to a limb gone cold. Like breath after holding it for too long. She pressed her forehead to the cool tile floor, whispering thank you, over and over. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me feel. Thank you for the sign. Even if it was just once. Even if it never came again. 12 years ago, Callie sat on the stone steps of the Cedar Hollow Library, a worn copy of The Grapes of Wrath folded open across her lap. Her thumb hovered over the corner of page 317, the one that always split her chest in two. She didn't notice the man approaching at first. Not until he spoke. "I always thought people who could read outside and cry at the same time were the most terrifying kind of beautiful." She looked up, startled, wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "You think I'm crying?" He nodded toward the book. "Page 317, right? When Tom leaves Ma. Gets me every time." She blinked at him. "You know the exact page?" He grinned, a wide, crooked thing that made him look boyish despite the faint stubble and sun-dark skin. "I've read that book every year since I turned 16, he said. "That page hits like a truck." Callie let out a small laugh. The first real one in days. You quoting it to strangers now? Only to women brave enough to cry in public, he said, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a book wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to her. Trade. She eyed it suspiciously. What is it? He smiled, gaze soft now. Leaves of Grass. My favorite copy. Underlined. Don't dog-ear it. She laughed again, a little more freely this time, and handed him her own. I'm Callie. Levi, he replied, already flipping to her dog-eared pages. Callie, do you always read in the sun? Only when it hurts to be indoors. Levi didn't press. Just sat down beside her on the steps, not too close, and began reading. They read like that for over an hour, two strangers exchanging silence the way some people pass notes. When she finally stood to go, he asked without looking up. Same time next week? She paused. You planning to bring another book? He looked up then, smile slow. Only if you promise not to cry on the good pages. She chuckled. I can't make that promise. Then I'll bring tissues too. That's how it began. A book, a step, a laugh between lines. They kept meeting on the library steps, exchanging books, quotes, pieces of themselves. He liked Whitman. She loved Steinbeck. He smelled like motor oil and apples. She always had pen ink smudges on her hands. Levi wasn't loud, but he made space for her words like they were worth something. Like she was worth something. Weeks turned to months, and months turned into Sundays spent driving nowhere in his old Ford truck. Windows down, fingers laced between songs on the radio. One afternoon, they parked under the cedar tree behind her father's barn. Levi climbed into the truck bed, pulled out a folded paper ring, and knelt on one knee. Callie blinked at it. You proposing with a ripped-out book page? It's from your favorite chapter, he said. I wanted it to mean something. She stared at him, stunned. He frowned. Oh no, are those sad tears again? You're not saying no, are you? She lunged forward, kissed his mouth hard, and whispered, No, you fool. I'm saying yes, forever. Callie used to say their love smelled like cinnamon and motor grease. Levi never corrected her. After the proposal beneath the cedar tree, their days melted into each other like sunlight across a porch floor. They never rushed anything. Nothing was urgent, and nothing had to be perfect. That's how Levi wanted it, slow, simple, steady. He'd show up on her daddy's land after work, arms dusty, cheeks streaked with oil, and say, Got time to ride? She'd grab her boots, swing into the passenger seat, and off they'd go. No plan, no map. Just gravel roads and music humming through static. They had their own traditions. Every first Sunday of the month, Levi made pecan pancakes. Callie made coffee so strong it could wake the dead. They'd sit on the truck's tailgate, watching the cows graze, the sky stretch wide, and not say a word for half an hour. Words weren't always needed. One summer evening, lightning bugs floated over the field like soft lanterns. Callie had her head on Levi's shoulder, his fingers running lazy patterns down her arm. You think it'll always feel like this? She asked quietly. What? Easy. She nodded. He paused. Not always easy, but if it ever stops feeling worth it, we'll go back to the library steps and start again. She smiled at that. Sometimes he'd pick her wildflowers and tie the stems with fishing line. Sometimes she'd leave notes in his tool bag. Quotes, jokes, bad puns she knew he'd grown at. She read while he fixed things. He'd hum while she cooked. Their life was ordinary to anyone else, but to them it was a kind of slow-burning magic. On her birthday, he surprised her with an old bookshelf he built by hand. Carved into the side, he'd etched, For the girl who made words feel like home. They didn't care about rings or big weddings. She wore a plain band. They married in her parents' backyard, barefoot in the grass. Her father cried more than she did. And every night, Levi kissed her goodnight like it might be the last time. She used to tease him about that. You're acting like you're shipping off to war. He'd grin. Just want to make sure if I go in my sleep, I leave on a kiss. She didn't know then how close that joke would come to truth. It happened on a fog-wrapped November morning. Levi had driven to the next county to pick up a box of children's books she mentioned loving when she was little. Some rare editions. Some she hadn't read since second grade. He left early, before the frost melted from the windows. She stayed home that day, baking sweet rolls, humming through a soft drizzle of rain outside. Her hair was still damp from the shower when the phone rang. It was Sheriff Holcomb. There had been an accident. A deer, a curve in the road, the old Ford truck, a tree. He didn't suffer. That's what they always say. Callie didn't scream, didn't collapse. She just stood there, hands still sticky with dough, the cinnamon smell making her nauseous. The rolls burned in the oven. The coffee grew cold. The silence arrived like a second skin. The funeral was small. Levi never liked attention. He was buried under the big oak near the southern pasture. She wore his flannel shirt over her dress and didn't say a word the entire service. When people offered condolences, she nodded, said thank you, and went back to being hollow. She didn't move his boots from the doorway, didn't wash his pillow. The paper ring stayed in the drawer beside her bed. She opened it some nights, stared at the crease marks, then folded it shut again. The first Christmas without him, she left his stocking hanging. The second, she didn't decorate at all. She didn't open new books. Couldn't. The silence between pages felt too much like the silence in their bed. Some nights she'd sit outside under the cedar tree where he'd proposed, knees pulled up to her chest, whispering into the wind. If I ever love again, Levi, please send me a sign. Please let it be okay. Just don't let it feel like betrayal. The wind never answered, but she kept asking. Because somewhere deep down, Callie knew she didn't want to spend the rest of her life being a ghost in her own house. Callie didn't expect to return to work. Not really. But Eleanor Mathis, her boss at the tiny publishing press in town, showed up on her porch one afternoon with a lemon pie and firm kindness in her voice. We've hired a new children's illustrator, Eleanor said. You're still the best story editor I've got. Callie shook her head. I haven't read a manuscript in. You don't have to talk much. He's quiet, thoughtful. Just review the stories. Mark what feels true. Callie looked down at the pie. Eleanor reached over and gently touched her wrist. Maybe truth's what you need again. The next day, Callie walked through the back door of the studio. She wasn't dressed up. Just jeans, a cardigan, and Levi's old flannel tied around her waist like armor. The scent of pencil shavings and old paper hit her instantly, familiar and distant all at once. In the far corner, bent over a large sketch pad, sat a man. Shoulders broad, sleeves rolled, flannel worn soft with age. His wire-rimmed glasses slid low on his nose as he sketched with practiced ease. A streak of graphite marked his right cheek. He looked up when she entered. Callie? He said, standing slowly. His voice was low and steady, like a stream moving beneath a dock. Yes, she answered, unsure why her voice felt so unused. He wiped his hand on a cloth and stepped forward, offering it. I'm Walker. I believe I'm supposed to make the stars come to life with you. She blinked. Pardon. He held up the sketch pad. It was a scene of a child gazing out a window, the sky above swirling with constellations and stories. The title at the top read, Stargazer's Wish. You edit the stories, he said. I illustrate the wonder. She didn't smile. Not yet, but her grip on the pendant around her neck loosened. Over the next hour, they barely spoke. She sat across from him, quietly flipping through the manuscript Eleanor left behind. He continued sketching, humming low to himself. Nothing she recognized, just a rhythm that felt grounding. At one point, Walker broke the silence. Lavender helps with grief, he said, still drawing. Planted some outside my porch. Callie looked up. He didn't glance at her, just kept sketching, soft pencil strokes moving like memory. I'm not here to fix you, he added, voice even. I'm just here to draw what the stars might look like if you believe in them again. She swallowed hard. No one had said anything like that. Not since Levi. Most people danced around the loss. Walker stepped near it but not through it. And somehow that felt safer than silence. Their workdays didn't start with chatter. They didn't need to. Callie would enter the back room with her tea. Walker would nod without looking up, pencil already dancing across paper. She'd sit, open a manuscript, begin reading. Some days they said nothing at all. But the silence wasn't cold, it was careful, considerate. And slowly things began to shift. She caught him watching once. Not staring, just observing. Like he was studying the way her fingers paused on certain paragraphs, or how her lips pressed together when something in the story touched a raw nerve. "You breathe different when you're focused," he said once, without looking up. She blinked. "I what?" "Most folks don't notice. But you stop halfway through your inhale. Like you forget you've got lungs." She didn't respond. Didn't need to. But that night, she noticed it too. How often she held her breath, as if waiting for something to break. Walker never asked about the ring on her chain. Never asked why her eyes looked older than her age. Instead, he'd say things like, "You drink mint tea, but your hands smell like cinnamon." Or, "You pause when you read the word forever. Every time." Or, "I make a mean apple pie. You like pie." She hadn't eaten pie since Levi passed. But something in the way Walker said it, casual, unassuming, made her nod without thinking. "I'll bring you a slice tomorrow," he said. No pressure. Just pie. She found herself smiling. Just a little. Halfway through, she laughed at a line about a clumsy raccoon named Elmer. It wasn't even that funny. Just silly. Simple. Walker didn't laugh. But when she glanced at him, he was smiling. Soft and steady, pencil stilled in his hand. "You should laugh more," he said. She blinked, startled. "I mean," he added quickly, "if it ever feels safe to." It was the first time in 2 years someone had spoken to her like she was still capable of joy. Not pity, not condolence, just possibility. And somehow that made it worse, because it made her feel again. And feeling hurt. That night she didn't turn the TV volume up. Just let it hum silently in the background while she sat with her thoughts. Walker hadn't asked her to open up. He hadn't asked anything at all. But something inside her was starting to unfold. The next morning, Callie barely moved. She sat on the kitchen floor long after the bird had flown away, Levi's name still trembling on her lips. The pendant around her neck rested against her collarbone, warm from her skin. She touched it like she always did, but this time, her grip was softer. Not desperate, just connected. Hours passed before she stood, her knees stiff, eyes swollen. She washed her face, brewed tea she didn't drink, and opened the door to the front porch just to let the air in. The quiet didn't feel so heavy. Something had shifted. She wasn't sure what it meant, if it was real or just grief playing tricks. But either way, the voice, the bird, the moment, it had cracked something. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't try to tape it back together. By mid-afternoon, the ache in her chest hadn't vanished. But it wasn't screaming either. It just sat there, like an old friend with nothing left to say. She picked up the book Walker had illustrated the week before, Stargazer's Wish. She hadn't actually read it yet, just flipped pages. Now, she opened it to page 1 and whispered the words aloud. Her voice wasn't steady, but it was there. She didn't call Walker. She just drove. The gravel road to his place curved past wild thickets and open skies. The lavender bush near his porch was still small, young, but stubborn. Like it had decided it would survive this ground no matter what. He was there, kneeling beside it, dirt on his palms, sleeves rolled again. Like always, Callie parked, stepped out. He looked up, didn't speak, just wiped his hands on his jeans and stood. She walked up to the edge of the porch and stopped. "You believe in signs?" she asked, voice even. Walker studied her for a moment. "Only when they arrive." She nodded slowly. "Last night, I heard his voice. In the kitchen. Just once. Then a bird came. A painted bunting." Walker didn't ask questions. Didn't offer explanations. He just stepped aside, nodded toward the swing, and said, "You want to sit?" She did. And when she did, he sat beside her. Not close, but not far. The breeze was soft. The scent of lavender faint but clean. They sat without filling the space with noise. Callie leaned back slightly, eyes on the horizon. She didn't cry, didn't talk much either. But when she stood to leave, he reached out and touched her hand. "Come back any time," he said. "Even if all I want to do is sit?" she asked. "Especially then." She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Her car door creaked open, closed, and when she drove home, the silence followed her. But this time it didn't feel like absence. It felt like room to breathe. It started with pie. Walker showed up at the press the next Monday with a small brown box. "I owed you dessert," he said, setting it on her desk. "Apple. No raisins." Callie glanced up from the page she was editing. "No one sane puts raisins in apple pie." He smirked. "That's what I thought." They shared the pie in the back room after hours, paper plates and quiet chewing. The silence wasn't awkward, just expectant. He didn't push for conversation. She didn't offer any. But when he stood to leave, she said, "You cook often?" "Often enough," he replied, grabbing his coat. "But only for people who like cinnamon." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. The second dinner was at her place. She made sweet tea. He brought cornbread. They sat on her porch, shared stories about childhood, brief ones. Mostly, they ate in silence, watching the sky change color. He didn't try to come inside, didn't hover, just said, "Same time next week?" And she nodded. One night, she brought back his empty pie dish. It was late, a little after 10. She didn't call ahead, just drove. Something restless had stirred in her all day, and she didn't want to sleep with it pressing against her ribs. She stood at his front door, dish in hand, coat too thin for the chill. Before she could knock, the door creaked open. Walker stood there in a white t-shirt and soft, wrinkled jeans. Barefoot, hair tousled. Cedar smoke drifted behind him from the fireplace. "You all right?" he asked gently. She nodded, held out the dish. Didn't want to forget to return it. He stepped aside. "You can come in, if you want." She hesitated, then stepped over the threshold. Inside it was warm, simple, clean. Books stacked neatly. A few drawings pinned on the wall. She set the dish on the counter, turned around and found him watching her. Not intently, not impatiently, just watching, like he saw something she hadn't noticed in herself. Her voice came out soft. "I feel guilty." He stayed still. "Why?" "Because Levi was everything. My whole heart." Walker stepped closer. Not enough to touch, just enough to meet her eyes. "I'm not asking to replace him," he said. "I'm only asking to be someone who holds what's still tender." Her lips parted, but no words came. He didn't move. She didn't either. "I don't know if I can love again," she whispered. His voice didn't change. "You already are." She didn't speak. Not when he stepped closer. Not when his hands rose slowly, pausing, asking permission with his eyes. Callie gave a slight nod. That was all it took. Walker touched her cheek, thumb tracing just beneath her eye. Her skin tingled where he touched, like waking up from a long sleep. He kissed her softly, not hungry, not hesitant, just present. Her breath caught in her throat, but she didn't pull away. They didn't rush. There was no frenzy, only a slow unfolding, like something sacred being unwrapped with care. Walker kissed her neck, pausing between each breath. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. She didn't even realize she was crying until he kissed the tear at the corner of her mouth. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded. "Just don't stop being this gentle." "I won't." His hands moved with reverence, not urgency. He touched her as if she were a story he didn't want to finish too quickly. Callie's cardigan slid down her shoulders. Walker paused when he saw the scar on her left shoulder. The one Levi used to tease her about, said it looked like a comma, like her body had more to say. Walker didn't tease. He kissed it, softly. "It's part of you," he murmured. "And I want all of you." Clothes gave way to skin. Not discarded, surrendered. Her body responded slowly but fully, like it had been waiting not just for touch, but for touch that understood grief. Walker's mouth moved down her collarbone, his hands firm at her waist, guiding without pressure. She let herself be guided. Their bodies met, and for the first time in a long time, Callie didn't feel haunted. She felt held. She clutched at him, not to possess, but to stay grounded, to feel something other than ache. The way he moved was slow, steady, with pauses, with breath, with care. She arched into him. He whispered her name. And when release came, it wasn't explosive. It was a soft undoing, like a breath finally let out after years of holding it. Later, they lay beneath the quilt Levi's mother had sewn, her back against his chest, his hand resting over her heart. He didn't say anything, didn't need to, just pressed a kiss to the crown of her head and stayed there, present, still, real. Morning light stretched across the floorboards, soft and gold. Callie sat by the kitchen window, mug in hand, steam curling up toward her face. The house was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. Not today. She still wore Levi's pendant, still touched it, but this morning, she didn't clutch it like a lifeline, just held it gently, like something remembered, not something lost. Walker padded into the kitchen barefoot, shirt half-tucked, hair still mussed from sleep. He paused in the doorway, watching her for a moment. She didn't turn, just said, "You make coffee?" He stepped behind her, slid his arms around her waist, and kissed her shoulder. "Didn't want to wake you." "You didn't," she whispered. They stood that way for a long moment, his chin resting lightly on her shoulder, her hand resting over his. "I thought it would feel wrong," she said finally. Walker didn't answer right away. He waited. "Wrong how?" he asked gently. "Like I was betraying him," she murmured. "Like I was leaving him behind." He held her tighter, but not too tight. "And now," she turned in his arms, facing him fully. "I'll never stop loving him," she said. "But I think I'm starting to love again." Walker nodded, didn't press, didn't promise, just leaned down and kissed her, light, affirming, quiet. They ate breakfast together at the counter, toast, eggs, and the last slice of pie from the night before. No plans, no big speeches, just the comfort of someone staying a little longer than silence. And when he left, she didn't feel him leaving a gap. Only the knowledge that something new was beginning, something that didn't replace but could still grow. Spring came to Cedar Hollow like it always did, slow and stubborn. But this time Callie noticed it. The lavender bush outside Walker's porch bloomed fully for the first time, pale purple spikes reaching toward the sun. She ran her fingers across the tops as they walked, the scent clinging to her skin like memory. Walker held her hand loosely, not leading, just matching her pace. They walked behind her farmhouse, through the pasture still damp from morning dew. Chickens clucked somewhere far off, and a woodpecker knocked against an old birch tree like a stubborn drummer. Callie pointed toward a crooked cedar tree near the fence line. "That's where he proposed," she said softly. Walker stopped beside her. "I haven't been back here in a long time," she added. "Used to think I'd never be able to stand here again." Her eyes stayed fixed on the tree. "But today, it doesn't ache like it used to." Walker didn't speak. He let her finish her own thoughts. "It feels like memory now," she said. "Not morning." He reached for her hand again. She let him take it. Above them, a flock of buntings crossed the sky in a sweeping line, bright specks of red and blue and green moving as one. Callie tilted her head up and watched them glide. A slow smile formed on her lips. "I think he's still watching," she whispered. "I think he's glad," Walker replied just as softly. They didn't linger under the tree. Didn't need to. When they turned to walk back, Callie leaned into his side, letting her head rest against his shoulder for just a moment. Her heart didn't feel hollow anymore. It didn't feel healed either. But it was beating in full again. And that was enough. A week later, Callie stood in front of her bookshelf for the first time in months. Dust lined the spines like a quiet apology. She reached for a copy of The Grapes of Wrath, the same one Levi first saw her reading. She opened it slowly, her fingers brushing the faded underlines, the folded corner on page 317. Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table and began to read aloud. Each word sounded like stepping stones. Small, careful, forward. Halfway through the chapter, she paused, closed the book gently, and placed it beside her. She stared at the pendant still hanging against her chest. Levi's ring. And after a long moment, she lifted it from her neck, kissed it once, and set it on the windowsill. The sun caught it just right. That afternoon, Walker arrived with a new manuscript in hand. "Children's story about a girl and her grandfather," he said. "Figured you'd want the first look." She took it, smiled. "Stay for tea?" He nodded. They sat on the porch swing as the breeze moved the curtains behind them. Callie leaned back, manuscript in lap, lavender wafting in the air. "You think we ever really let go?" she asked softly. Walker shook his head. "I think we carry, just differently." She smiled. "Then I think I'm ready to carry him, and still move forward." He reached over and laced his fingers with hers. "You already are." If this story reminded you that healing doesn't mean forgetting, tap that like button and share this video with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this one are just the beginning.